Good morning. I have pondered since September the 20th as it relates to an issue in which I've been named and I've been referenced in what I perceive and what I call a highly racial, inflammatory, discriminatory slang term by a colleague which I've had the opportunity to serve the children and the families of Florence School District 1 for the past 16 years. And the troubling portion of this is that I'm a product of this community. And I can remember the days of such giants in this community as Cupatetta, Rocky Pierce, who provided leadership and whose campaigns as a young child I had the opportunity to participate, and I held high the standards of government and participatory, and even going back to remembering the first African American who sat on this board, Mr. Theodore Lester, and also going back and recalling when I was hired in this district in 1994 by then Superintendent Tom Truitt, who was not only a superintendent, but he was also an inspiration in terms of, as an African American student who was able to graduate from the historical Wilson High School, but he also saw to it that I received scholarships so that I would be able to complete my teacher education, in which I did graduate, and I was able to return back home. And so when I think about that, and then I think about my grandfather, who had a third grade education, and my grandmother, who had 9 days in the 9th grade, but because of the times, she would have to go back into the cotton fields and did not complete. And then I think about the fact that she and my grandfather had 9 children, and all of them would be able to matriculate and complete high school. And then, on top of that, some were also able to receive a college education. And then when I think about my 89-year-old grandmother, who is alive now, who went to Savannah Grove School and was not able to complete beyond the 6th grade, but was able to take care of her family and to raise her family. And I think about the shoulders of those that have invested in me in this community. And I think about the children that I have poured into them. And this past week, my confirmation came from a student that I had in my class for a short period of time that I saw in Lee County. And didn't recognize the student, but the student was able to recognize me and say, Mr. Pipkins. So the confirmation in terms of what we plant today impacts tomorrow. And the points that I'm going to raise today are my personal points. And I recognize my colleagues on the board. They have their own perspectives and they have their own agendas. But I want to declare as of today, on this Friday, October the 13th, 2017, this is a new day where I stand, because I've had long enough time, number one, to pray about what was given to me, how it was given to me, and the level of disrespect that I have received in reference to it. And I want to go back over the timeline for the record that was shared. And I've got some CDs here so that it can be referenced accordingly. The media needs it. But it's my understanding that via the email that was sent by a past board member, that it was on August the 29th when it was originally generated. Then on August the 29th, the superintendent sends the email and discusses it with the chairman. Then on August the 30th, Chairman Townsend, he shares the email with Vice Chairwoman Calder. Then on August the 31st, the chairman attempted to contact Member Odom, Then on September the 7th, Chairman Townsend and Vice Chairwoman Calder, they met with Member Odom. On September the 14th, we had a board meeting, and this was not even divulged to any of the board members in the public session nor in executive session. On September the 18th, 4 days later, Chairman Townsend, Vice Chairwoman Calder, and Attorney Andrew White met with Member Odom. But my name was in there. And the last I checked the record, I was elected to serve, and I took an oath to serve. I've been chairman of this board myself. I understand protocol and procedure, but it has been referenced that it was different. I don't accept it being different in how it's handled. Standard protocol. I've been trained in nonprofit leadership, rural leadership development at Francis Marion University, and one of my great inspirations was Fred Shaheen, and he taught us very well. September the 19th, the chairman said he attempted to inform board member McIver. September the 20th, the chairman informs me. September the 20th, he informs member Galloway. September the 20th, he informs member Chapman. September the 21st, the chairman informs member McLeod. September the 22nd, the chairman informs member Stewart. September the 23rd, member McIver calls me at 12:15 a.m. Then September the 23rd, same morning, board member McIver calls the chairman at 12:29 a.m. September the 23rd, the same morning, McIver calls vice chairwoman at 12:30 a.m. So you see, from August the 29th all the way to September the 23rd, and if my counting is not off, and hopefully it's not off because I was educated in Florence School District 1, that's 6 days shy of being 30 days. Well, the issues that I have here is that a board attorney providing legal counsel to 2 board members absent of the superintendent and the board not being made aware. They never walked in my shoes to know what my perspective or my reaction would be as it relates to board member Odom. Board member Odom was sick back in February, and I prayed for his healing and his restoration. I have no control over whether or not a person hates me or is a racist or a bigot, but when there's racism, hatred, and bigotry, I extend love, peace, mercy, and joy. My issue here, as it relates to him, is separate from what has occurred within the confines of the leadership of Florence School District 1. Also, Attorney White never sent any legal update to the board and yet met with a third of the board in a secret private meeting that the full board was not aware. That should draw some concern. My personal concern is why Attorney White was chosen when the chairman of the board, who is also chairman of the Attorney Search Committee, was well aware of issues and concerns which the superintendent shared with the committee members about that firm, which I will not discuss at that time. But the chairman, he knew what those issues were as they resided with neighboring school districts. The superintendent's role. to give it to the chair and hands off, that perpetuates a system of institutional racism. I don't care if the person is Caucasian or African American. A perpetuation of a system ultimately impacts the person who is the subject. When I met with the chairman, his biggest point of concern was that the superintendent was offended. And my response to him at that time, which he did not mention on last night, but my name was in the email. And then last night, when I learned that the chairman received his email 8 minutes after the email was sent via an email, and I had to get in my car after I had requested it several times, I had to get in my car and drive to pick it up. That's leadership. That's definitely different. Now, the chairman and the vice chairman, their roles, they were not transparent. This is an example of backroom politics and institutional racism. Now, there are 2 other African Americans who sit on this board with me between the ages of 70 to 76. If I'm not accurate, forgive me. But they're my seniors. They're what I called as a child the elders of the community. Not wanting to address this issue in the context of the public. The public's business should be vetted in the public's view. The communication was communicated via the public's internet server from the board member. However, it appears even in terms of at the ending of the meeting, in terms of a committee which fellow board member Stewart and I both served on, that there was a diversionary tactic to dissolve that committee and then to name another African American who hasn't been on the board quite a year, and I'm going to so dare to say has not had the same levels of trainings and experience, and certainly does not bring some of the experiences that both Mr. Stewart and I have. So I'm going to go on record and say that this is what we historically refer to as the Willie Lynch syndrome in 2017. Divide and conquer. Pull one over here and share this. Give this one that. Give this one that. So this whole diversionary tactic to separate and not come and deal with the public's business in the view and the eyes of the public is what you call the Willie Lynch syndrome. Today what I have done as well, I brought some books. When I taught in Florence School District 1, I taught African American history and I taught Southern history. There wasn't a book in the school for African American history. Wrote a grant. Then Principal Allen Harrison, I received the grant. This is a book. I'm going to recommend that perhaps Florence School District 1's administrative office, board members, they need to read and understand what African American history is. Because until you walk in the shoes of each person, and we all cannot walk in each person's shoes because each person's experiences are totally different. Then I also bought another book, The African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. I think we also need to make certain we have this as a reading piece so that we understand the experiences are distinctively different. So whomever made the decision to simply contain, restrain, produce when necessary, definitely did not share my experiences. Each experience is unique and distinct. However, I sit as a policymaker, as a board member, before any other aspect, all 9 of the board members. But it is very, very clear to me that the most important opinion that was respected from the beginning was the person who sent out the email. Was it the intent after you converse with the person that you were going to utilize undue power, influence to get that person to resign? They didn't have the authority. The board does not have the authority to get that person to resign. That was that person's right. It was not a criminal offense. And I'm going to say this, in this day and time in which we live, I would rather see the person in their face, who they are, versus them covering it up with a sheet over their head. Next, the end in mind. I heard that several times, the end in mind. We have organizations in our community, such as the NAACP, no public or official position on this substantive issue that I'm aware of. The only organization in this community that has taken a position and taken a statement has been Lifeline Plus, which advocates for causes for all people. And even that organization has been dismissed by this board. Dismiss. So I'm puzzled when people say that, well, I'm supported and we're advocates for the children. Our job is not to only be advocates for children, but to also to engage our community and our public. July the 23rd, 2013. After consultation with several other folks, we created a hybrid called the Humanitarian and Voter Education League. The Humanitarian and Voter Education League, or just simply short to call it HAVL, which aims to organize a majority constituency of low to moderate income people in South Carolina. The members of HAVL take on issues of relevance to their communities, which includes discrimination, affordable housing, a quality education, better public services, and informed election and voter processes. HAVL believes that low to moderate income people are the best advocates for their communities, and so low to moderate income members act as leaders, spokespeople, and decision makers within the organization. HAVL is a nonpartisan effort to mobilize the people in our community. So I want to serve notice on today, October the 13th, 2017, that this initiative called HAVL is alive and well in the city of Florence, in the county of Florence, and the PD region. And we're going to be extending for folk to get involved, because we can't tolerate this type of backdoor, non-transparent policies, procedures, or something that's different. My last and closing remarks: institutional racism, cultural sensitivity requires training for all, from the boardroom to the superintendent's office, classroom to the kitchen, cafeteria to the custodian's room to the bus parking lot, every facet of our school district. The superintendent should be developing plans and procedures to address issues such as this. How can we hold students accountable for higher ethical and moral standards than the current board and current administration? Please do not use diversionary tactics which some minorities use when they want to avoid addressing racism, discrimination, and unfair treatment within their own race. Last but not least in this component is that there is a syndrome that is called the Shaka Zulu syndrome. And I don't know how long I will live But my position is I don't want to ever have the Shaka Zulu mentality or the Shaka Zulu syndrome, because that mentality or that syndrome simply implies after me there will be no more. When I understand the African Americans' many rivers to cross, it dispels that, because each generation should leave something for the next generation. And as I sit here today as an African American, I am a mixture of many different ethnicities, many different cultures. My African American heritage is very, very visible, but I'm also a Cherokee. I also have some Englishmen, and to perhaps even could have been related to the board member who called me a darky. My great-great-grandfather was named Peter Thomas. So I say all that to say in my last and final remarks, there's some recommendations that I'm offering from myself. And at each board meeting, I will be adorned in black. And these recommendations will be coming forth at each board meeting in public participation until there is a level of discussion and recognition and acknowledgement and final level of activism to adequately address these issues. The board leadership did not offer any formal action for the board to take via a resolution to publicly denounce the actions of the former board member. So I'm asking for Mr. Chairman and Ms. Vice Chairman that they craft, along with the superintendent, and this is something different, that they craft a resolution for the board to publicly denounce these actions. Number two, the board leadership take action requesting the South Carolina School Board Association to take action to issue a resolution to publicly denounce the actions of the former board member and any board member who utilizes racism and defaming words concerning board members and anyone. The board and the superintendent take action to develop race, equity, and diversity training sessions with an organization which specializes in addressing these issues and developing restorative justice and organizational reflective practice. The board needs training immediately. It is on a course of collision with this leadership. Abuse of authority and leadership and bullying and coercive subtle strategies have no place in leadership of public institution governing bodies. Request SLED and the Justice Department to launch a full investigation or audit of Florence School District 1's email system to determine if such other acts are being communicated by others in our organization. The present leadership manipulates when, how, and who they differently disseminate information to all board members. So I'm asking that they request SLED and the Justice Department again to launch a full investigation or audit of our email system. This occurrence will be sent to the Justice Department and SLED. Over the past 25 years, a veteran school board member who has been a member of the South Carolina School Board Association, achieved level 6, which is the highest level of training for a board member, has influenced public education policies and platforms with a lens cloudy with the ugliness of bigotry, racism, discrimination, and prejudice. These recommendations are not addressed. I'm putting you all on notice today that I will be continuously calling for new leadership for Florence School District 1 from the board to the superintendent's office. Thank you.